Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me today. It's Allan Laboucan with the Rocks and Stocks News Show. We've got an exciting show today as gold has been talking a lot about lately, how I thought that everything was lining up for gold, and we're starting to see some of that action today. Gold is now up $42 an ounce. The futures is at about 2042, and the spot is at about 20 some. And what caused all this action today was the JOLTS report, which is the an important employment number. And the Fed has been on a relentless campaign to break things with, after 14 years of near zero interest rates. And then in 2022, they started the campaign to jack them up to near 5%, and didn't seem to care that they were going to break things. We've seen signs in the housing market. We're seeing signs in the commercial real estate market. We're seeing signs in the computer sales, car sales, big ticket items. The consumer is stretched. They're making ends meet with their credit cards, and those are at 19% interest rates. And as I said, the Fed doesn't seem to care about all these things. They started a banking crisis. These smaller banks were loaded up with long-term treasury and bonds and mortgage-backed securities that were piled on during the near zero interest rates. Now that they've gone up so much, they're significantly underwater. I hope it's not lost on people that the Federal Reserve is sitting on $8 trillion worth of the same kind of assets. So, when this banking crisis took place, the Federal Reserve's quantitative tightening by trying to reduce their balance sheet quickly turned corner, because they had to backstop all these depositors in these troubled smaller banks. And I think that story is just at the beginning stages. It reminds me of the mortgage or the asset-backed security crisis that happened in 2017 prior to the 2007, that happened prior to the 2008 economic collapse. These things are all intertwined, and these unwinding of the banking crisis that's happened with the Silicon Valley Bank, Signature Bank, Credit Suisse, First Republic, and the list goes on. And the key problem is, after 14 years of raising interest rates and relentlessly, this has put a lot of assets of banks, not just the small ones either, the bigger ones and the Federal Reserve, all having balance sheets that are quite strained and troublesome. And I don't think that this problem is transitory, neither, just like I didn't think that inflation was transitory. And now they've broken the banking crisis. They caused the banking crisis, and now they're, seem to be on a relentless path to break the job market as well, and the economy. And they're doing a hell of a good job at it. I've been saying for a while that I think, or for some time now, since the banking crisis, that I think that the best place for investors to park their money for protection is in gold. And for those that want to grow their money, I think that you can look at gold stocks, silver stocks, and other commodities as the place to be. We need all of these things to protect the monetary problem, and also to produce the gold, the metals that are needed for the energy transition and the electric vehicle revolution. And yet all of these metals have gone through many, I would say, decades of underinvestment to find through exploration new deposits that can then be built into new mines and then help the supply chain. But we're even seeing signs of it in the supply chain. Just the other day, there was a hostile takeover by Glencore making a run at Teck. That might be difficult to do because the Kivo family has long held a dominant position in the voting shares of Teck. But the fact that they're willing to go after a company that it's very hard for them to take control of is a sign of the times that in these big mergers, like what we're seeing with Newmont trying to take over Newcrest, they don't actually add anything to the supply chain. They just move it from one big entity to another big entity. The bigger point is that we need more exploration money. We need more exploration success. The mining sector needs new mines developed to replace the old mines. And in some critical minerals like copper, which is the most critical, the supply is very, very weak. This is going to cause a problem. A supply crunch is coming for a lot of metals. And now that we're seeing some, the monetary situation, the US dollar, all these other indicators are all pointing towards, as Robert Friedland likes to call it, revenge of the miners. You look at venture capital going into technology, and yeah, there are some important technology being backed by venture capital, but there's also a lot of nonsense of, who needs another social media site that so you can share your cat pictures and your cat videos. And these companies can get billions of dollars, billions and billions of dollars. Yet to make all of the technology, whether it's your cat videos or your real technology innovation, needs a lot of raw materials to make everything work. Without copper, nothing works in our modern. Your lights don't work, your computer doesn't work, your car doesn't work, your fridge doesn't work, your stove doesn't work. Nothing works without copper and other raw materials. And I believe that Robert Friedland is exactly correct when he calls it the revenge of the miners. And getting back to today's news, I'm going to share a screen here, and let's go over to, let's look at, here was an article in Zero Hedge. Labor market finally cracks. Job openings, hires crashed to lowest since May 21, and they miss every estimate. The estimates on this job report. Let's start with the previous number, which was 10.82 million. Then the expected number was 10.5. The actual number was 9.9. So as I said earlier, now the Federal Reserve is breaking the labor market, the jobs market. Jolt sees, here's one from the Macrovisor. Jolt see a big decline, 9.9 million job openings posted versus expectations. And a lot of times things get lost in the headline number. But if you look at the sort of the labor market out there, there's a lot of people that are, having to take on second and third part-time jobs. So a lot of the jobs that are being created are actually, part-time jobs. And so I think the labor market is a lot worse than people think. And I think the Federal Reserve and their campaign to to break the labor market is now being seen in the statistics. Here's something that I also found interesting in the Financial Times today. Hedge funds caught off guard in turmoil. Sharp moves after the implosion of Silicon Valley Bank have left many in the red for the year. Now, why this is important to me is that I think that this banking crisis is the start of a contagion, and it's not just limited to the banks, the small banks, the medium-sized banks, and even into the bigger banks. There's other entities out there, such as hedge funds and other entities that also are, offside because of this banking crisis. It kind of makes me laugh that they're still called hedge funds, because it's been a long time since real hedge funds were operating where they would go long one asset and short another asset. Hedge funds seem to be all going in one direction, which doesn't make for a traditional hedge fund, but that's the state of affairs these days. Okay, another thing that's happening, and I think that this is more of a political situation, is that part and parcel with the efforts by the Fed to break things is there's a currency war that's going on right now. Signs that currency war has been happening are in the gold market. You see a lot of the central banksters of the world that are starting to load up on gold. And now these same banks are starting to talk about competing currencies to the US dollars, reserve currency status. And what I find very bullish for gold is that they're backing their efforts up with gold. Singapore added another 6.8 tons of gold in February. As it states here in this Kitco article, central bank gold demand has completely transformed the gold market after a record 1.136 tons were added to global reserves last year. And while 2023 isn't expected to be another record year, official sector demand will remain healthy. I take some skepticism saying that 2023 won't be a record year. I think it's going to be another record year that blows away 2022, not just with the central bank buying, but I think generalists are going to start to find generalist investors, big and small, are going to start to find their way into the gold sector. And therefore, I think that the demand for physical gold is going to go up quite dramatically. Now, in that article on Kitco, they mentioned this World Gold Council article. Central banks show little sign of buyer fatigue in February. Central bank buying momentum showed no signs of stalling in February. Reported global gold reserves rose by 52 tons during the month, the 11th consecutive month of net purchases. This includes updated data for Russia, but still maintains the upward trend based on 12-month moving average. Central banks maintain momentum in gold. As you can see here, 2022 or 2020, they kind of bottomed. Now, bear in mind that they had been increasing their annual purchasing from 2008 after the global economic crisis right here till 2019. It softened up in 2019 and 2020, but they're back on the buying side and heading much higher. Central bank demand in 2022 had the strongest start since at least 2010. Not long after the global economic crisis in 2008. So these central bankers are showing you their hands. They're showing you that they're buying gold hand over fist, and to back up their efforts in this currency war that's currently underway. And I don't think that there's going to be a stop to it. I believe that a lot of central bankers throughout the world have felt somewhat bullied by the U.S. In that the U.S. had long had the advantage of the global reserve currency, where goods and commodities were traded in the U.S. dollar, and so that put a artificial strength into the U.S. dollar, and I think that that's coming to an end, and you can see it in the action in the U.S. dollar. I'm going to go back to a share screen here. Just bear with me 1 second, and sorry, got the wrong screen there. Share screen. Here you go. Okay, so here you can see the U.S. dollar index. It topped out in late September at a 114, went into a very serious bear market, had a death cross in January and a very poor January effect. I do pay attention to the January effect because what happens at that time of the year is that big funds and big institutions are looking at the year ahead and positioning themselves for the assets that they think are going to have a strong year. And so the January effect is an important trend. So you had a combination, weak January effect and a death cross. In February, some employment numbers came in that had the currency traders believing that the Federal Reserve would, aggressively crank up their interest rate hikes in the effort to break things. And then the banking crisis started, and it rolled over again. Right as of today, it's been trading for the last 10 days or so under the 50-day moving average. And I think it's just looking for an excuse to drop even more aggressively. So let's take a look at gold. Now, bear in mind that this is the end of the day quote from yesterday. Gold is now up here somewhere, right around here. Oh, not there, right about there. So it has been on a very strong run since the banking crisis started, and now is seeming to get into overdrive as the jobs numbers are coming up. And I think what the market is suggesting, and I believe it's necessary, is that the Federal Reserve is going to stop raising interest rates. And as they stop raising interest rates, that's going to be a negative for a bearish situation for the US dollar. The most closely watched price for commodities is in the US dollar because of its reserve currency status, and that it's, a lot of commodities are traded in the US dollar. But as I said earlier, there's a currency war going on that I don't think a lot of people are paying attention to. And I think the underlying problem is that, a lot of central bankers throughout the world and governments want to see alternatives to the world reserve currency of the US dollar, and they're backing their efforts up with gold. And so we're right about here on the futures. It's having a tremendously good day. Okay, now let's go over to silver, because I think that, I know that silver and gold is the leader, silver always follows. But as gold is reaching its all-time highs, now it's tried this level 2 previous times, but those were one-day spikes that ended the day lower. And it happened twice, once in 2019 and once in 2021. I do believe that this current trend is going to take it well over and move towards 2,500 this year. And due to all of these, currency wars, inflation, the banking crisis, the slowdown in the US economy, all of these things are a perfect storm for gold to go much higher. But as you can see, silver trading at about $25 today is still about half price from its all-time highs. So gold is about to start making new all-time highs, and silver is on half price sale. I think that's I'm more bullish on silver than I am gold right now, and I'm very bullish on gold. So I think silver is lagging and has a lot more upside left in it. Now, with all of this happening in the world, copper is an important commodity to follow. And I think what protects copper is that all the governments of the world want their vehicle markets to turn to electric. And in order to do that, it's going to need a lot of copper. It's going to need a lot of lithium. It's going to need a lot of other critical minerals. And the most critical is copper. Nothing works without copper. You need a lot of copper in electric vehicles, and you need a lot of copper to get the energy to the electric vehicles. And you need a lot of other commodities in order to have alternative energy sources, wind and solar and electric vehicle, wind, solar, uranium. You need a lot of raw materials to make all of that happen. But copper tends to be sort of a leader for the price of base metals. And as you can see here, it went on a very nice run from early November until January. Gold, then the US dollar got some strength, but since then, copper's been showing a lot of relative strength. It's basically been going sideways right around the 50-day moving average. I think it's ready for a upswing. There's very tight supply for copper right now. The warehouses that store it for the end users are at like 1 or 2 days worth of inventories. For much of my career, you could measure that in weeks or months of inventory sitting in these warehouses for the end users. Now you're down to a day or two, and that's a supply crunch in the making. And with all this demand that's coming from electric vehicle revolution, copper, I think, could have a massive breakout, and I think a lot of other metals could as well. So let's start getting into the stocks. Now, a lot of times I sort of go by themes and areas that I'm focused on. Today, I'm going to switch it up a little, and I'm going to talk about companies just in alphabetical order. Fortunately, my company, where I'm the CEO and a big shareholder, is a company called Advanced Lithium, and they've got the AA in their symbol, so they get to be talked about first today. For much of 2022, we had been under a lot of pressure because of the news coming out of the Mexican government talking about creating a national lithium company and changing the mining laws. But then we had a significant breakout when we put out a news release that we are in discussions with the national lithium company in Mexico called Lithium. And the idea there is we're talking about the possibility of a joint venture to move our projects towards near-term production. And so this has got us some new enthusiasm. But then we also have excellent exposure to silver and gold as well. Our most recent acquisition was the 170 square kilometers of ground in the Bathurst mining camp. This is one of the most important VMS mining camps in the world. And we have now one of the largest land packages in that mining camp. There's been 45 known deposits in the camp, and 7 of those deposits are on our property. The biggest one is 25 million tons. Now, this was done prior to the National Instrument 43101, so it's considered a non-compliant resource. The work was good, it's just that it was before the National Instrument 43101. In fact, it was done way back in the 1960s and 70s. But what excites me about that Canoe Landing Lake resource is that it is 25 million tons. And the geological assessment of that in the past in technical reports is that that is the debris flow from a primary VMS deposit that has yet to be found. Now, if the debris flow is that big, I can only, imagine what the size of the VMS that it's associated with is. Think of these VMS deposits, they are a volcano. So if you've ever seen the lava coming off of a volcano, it spreads out, that's the debris flow. And then as you get closer to the vent, you find the actual volcano. That's the same model that you're looking at in these VMS deposits. And so in the debris flow, if the debris flow is 25 million tons, it says a lot about the potential for the not only size of the actual VMS deposit, but also the grade potential. The grade is very good in the debris flow, and as you get closer to the vent or the actual volcano, you're closer to the heat engine, and the grades usually go up as you find that. So that's one key asset on the project. But then there's also to the north and to the west of that is what's called the California Lake project. And the California Lake, the previous owner, Wolfton, of this project that we did a purchase agreement with, they had drilled into an epithermal vein with very high grades of silver. Now, why this is important is that in an epithermal vein, you need to find there's zonation of grade along strike and at depth. A seminal moment for an epithermal vein system is when you get into the boiling zone of that epithermal vein. And those grades indicate that they had hit the boiling zone of epithermal veins. So these epithermal veins often come in clusters, and where you find one, you often find many. But what this tells you is that we've got an epithermal vein with very high grades of silver to expand on along strike and at depth. And we sort of know where the boiling zone depth should be if we find other epithermal veins. So that gives us excellent exposure to silver, and all the other ground gives us excellent exposure to copper, silver, lead, zinc, and gold and silver in those VMS deposits. And then we've got another excellent project in Mexico called Serape. This is 55 square kilometers right beside Las Chispas, which is the new mine put into commercial production in November by SilverCrest. SilverCrest is one of my picks, so I'll talk more about Las Chispas later in the show. But what's important is that there's 2 known epithermal veins on that property. One of them is 5 kilometers, the other's 2. The 2 kilometer one has only ever seen 1 hole. The 5 kilometer one has only ever seen 5 holes that tested the vein. And the vein, I don't believe that the boiling zone of those veins have been found yet. Now, as you go to the immediate south to Las Chispas, there's a massive cluster of epithermal veins. So that potential also exists at our property because we're in the same kind of rocks, we're in the same kind of structural faulting regime network, and so that gives us exposure to gold and silver. So we're a well-diversified explorer that has significant exploration potential for silver, gold and silver, base metals, and lithium. And taking all of those things into consideration, I believe that any one of those projects could be a company maker. We've got 3 in one, and we only have about a $4.5 million valuation. So Advance is one for you to take a look at. All right. Next in the A's is a company called Athena. Athena is so small that stock charts doesn't even cover it. So I'll just go off stop share here for a minute. There's my Athena Gold as a sponsor of the shows. Now, they're a new sponsor in 2023, January 2023. And why I invited them is I think they've got a very exciting gold oxide project in Nevada that really not many people are paying attention to. They got a very tiny valuation, but I've done some interviews with their key geological brains in the company, and the few things that stand out to me is that you've got 2 big faults on the north side, or on the south side, and on the north side. And these are the conduits that the metals-bearing fluids make their way up. Then in between those 2 faults is a very large area of alteration. Where you get alteration is because those gold-bearing fluids make their way to surface, interact with the country rock, and they chemically alter it. So you've got the faulting, big alteration, then they drilled into it with 3 holes and just had phenomenal success. I could call this bonanza grades for an oxide deposit. And the reason that I say that is that, you know, a lot of oxide deposits these days are being mined at 0.5 gram to 1 gram. And these guys drilled into over significant intersections, multi-grams, even up to 15 grams of gold in oxides. That's several orders of magnitude higher than the average grades of mines these days, and oxide mines. And so I think they've got a heck of an opportunity and a very small valuation. And so I'm very bullish on Athena. Okay, now we're going to move into the B's. And Blackrock, or I guess I should go to Bell Copper first. Bell Copper is not a sponsor of my shows, but they have passed my litmus test in a couple areas. One is that they've got an excellent copper project in Arizona. And just make sure I do my share screen here. There we go. All right. So there's this Bell Copper chart. So Bell Copper is in Arizona. Arizona is known as a elephant country for copper deposits. Their previous hole that they drilled kind of clipped the edge of what looks like an elephant geophysical anomaly, and the geological story suggests that as well. And now they've drilled another hole that's currently underway, and they're drilling for the guts of that elephant, if you will. Their CEO is Tim Marsh. I've done interviews with Tim in the past. Really smart geologist, lives down there and lives and breathes the Arizona copper stories. And I think he's got a big winner on his hands. And as you can see, it bottomed in late December, had a higher high in late February, has broken out significantly above the 50-day moving average and the 200-day moving average. It's now significantly above the 200-day moving average and the 50-day moving average. and it looks like there's a golden cross to happen any day now in the next day or two. I think that's a very good sign that they're getting optimistic signs from the drilling. And I'm a big believer in Tim and his team. I'm keeping my fingers crossed. If they in fact do hit the copper elephant that he's looking for, this stock will trade at many multiples of its current valuation. I think they've got a heck of good potential to do that. And Bell Copper is one that you should take a look at. Okay, now I'm going to move back to a sponsor of my reports, which is Blackrock Silver. Blackrock Silver is very oversold, got very oversold down here to under 30 cents. It's starting to come back up as we're getting more bullish action towards gold and silver, and they have very excellent gold and silver prospects. At their Tonopah project in Nevada, they have a resource around, let's say, 50 million ounces of silver and gold, with an average silver grade very high, around 450 grams per ton of silver. And that's the kind of thing, that grades that make for very profitable silver mines. They're expanding on that. They've drilled about double the footprint of since the resource was put out last year. And it looks like it's going to get a lot bigger. Now, the second project that's not getting a lot of attention for them, but I'm really optimistic about, is called their Silver Cloud project. And at their Silver Cloud project, they drilled into an epithermal vein, and they hit a 1.5 meter intersection of 70 grams of silver, or 70 grams of gold, and 600 grams of silver. And what that tells you is that that has passed the litmus test of an epithermal vein, in that you know when you're in those kind of grades that you've hit the boiling zone of an epithermal vein. Now they need to expand on it and see how big it is, how thick it is, if there's more in the immediate area around that. But I think they've got a rival to their Tonopah area in the Silver Cloud area, and collectively they're about to start, really cranking up the drills, and I think they're going to have excellent news flow. Blackrock Silver is an oversold company with silver, gold, and lithium, and I highly recommend you do your homework on that company. Okay, now I'm going to move to the D's. Dynasty Gold. Dynasty Gold is a new sponsor that came on board in January. And the reason I invited them is that they've got this project called Thundercloud in the Dryden area in Ontario, not too far from Red Lake, actually. And what they've drilled into is a orogenic gold system. Now, these orogenic gold systems can be very spectacular. One of the analogies is the Fosterville mine in Australia. When Kirkland Lake started mining what was called the Swan Zone, it was a fabulously profitable mine, bonanza grades and low cost, created a lot of free cash flow, made them one of the lowest cost producers, and their stock was one of the significant outperformers of their peers, and they were ultimately bought out. Now, another important one, much closer to Dynasty's Thundercloud, is the Red Lake mine itself. And at Red Lake, they had spent 20 years or so or more mining near surface. And it was a okay mine, nothing special. Then they drilled deeper, and they found the bonanza grades, the jewelry boxes of high-grade gold at about 1,000 meters, and it continued for another 1,000 meters. When they were mining that, Gold Corp was one of the lowest cost producers, very low cost, very high grade, very much free cash flow. And a recent important event for Dynasty Gold is they announced a private placement, and Rob McEwen, who ran Gold Corp and led it through their discovery and mining of the Bonanza Gold in their orogenic gold system, has recently committed to doing a $1.2 million financing for the company. If anybody knows what an orogenic gold system looks like, it's Rob McEwen. The fact that he's putting some money into this tiny little company that's at the early stages of a discovery of an orogenic gold system of significance, I think is quite important. The key reasons that I'm so bullish on it is the company's drilled, there was a historical hole, and then they drilled 3 holes near it. The historical hole hit high grade, and the 3 holes hit high grade to bonanza grades. One intersection was 3 meters of 151 grams, and 1.5 meters of that was 246 grams per ton of gold. So just bonanza grades. But then you want to know, in an orogenic gold system, do those high grade hits line up into what's called continuity? And that's exactly the case. They line up perfectly, those 4 holes. And then it looks like there's a second zone right below that that also hit bonanza grades, 1.5 meters of about 60 grams. So it looks like they've got 2 horizons, or 2 zones, or 2 veins, whatever you want to call them, of bonanza grades with continuity potential. Now the trick is to keep drilling, and now they're raising $2.8 million. And that will help them to get aggressively drilling to keep following that bonanza grade hits that they've hit in 2 zones now. The company has a tiny valuation. Came to life when they announced the results of that thundercloud results with those high grades, meandered kind of sideways. And now is coming to life as the gold gets stronger, and Rob McEwen is the lead order in a $2.8 million financing. So Dynasty Gold is a sponsor. I'm going to be participating in the private placement, and they're one for you to take a look at as well. Okay, we got through the D's. Now we're going to talk about Galantas Gold. Galantas is also an orogenic gold exploration company, and they have hit a orogenic gold system in Ireland. And what I really like about this story is that they've got what looks like a series of orogenic gold zones or veins that are in very close proximity to each other. And they've been drilling mostly in the upper parts of the orogenic gold system. And that's usually where you find fine-grained gold. As you get deeper, you get coarser-grained gold as you get closer to the heat engine that created this whole gold mineralizing system. In addition to the high grades that they're high grade to bonanza grades that they're already getting in the uppermost part of an orogenic gold system, they're also getting what are called dilation zones. And so this is where the rocks open up a little bit more. And what usually causes that is the power of the fluids making their way up. So you get this breakage. And they've got a series of these dilation zones, which is all suggestive that this is a very powerful gold, orogenic gold mineralizing system at depth. And now they're going to start drilling deeper into that system. I think they've got the potential to just blow it out of the park with their additional drilling as they keep going deeper. Another news generator will be that they recently acquired a VMS project in Scotland that's very underexplored, but has a lot of geological merit to it. As you can see there, they bottomed out here, a triple bottom back in February, March, and late March. And now they're starting to firm up. They had a very significant breakout today, well above the 50-day moving average and sort of in between the 50-day and the 200-day. I think the key catalyst for them will be as they get drilling deeper into their orogenic gold system. And keep an eye on Galantas Gold. They recently did a private placement that I also participated in. So obviously I'm a big fan of Galantas. Okay, Golden Lake Exploration is a company where I'm they're a sponsor of the show and I'm an advisor to the company. They are in close proximity to i-80 Gold and Paycore, two of my sponsors. Now, i-80 Gold is taking over Paycore as we speak. That should be done in the next month or so. And then immediately to the south of that is the Golden Lake Exploration Ground. So what's happening with i-80 Gold in the Eureka camp is that they've found bonanza grade CRD with an overprint of high grade gold as well, making it quite unique and very high value of metals in per ton in the rock that they have found. And right to their immediate south is Paycore, and Paycore has found the same kind of stuff, bonanza grade CRDs. And now i-80 is buying out Paycore, and then Golden Lake has also drilled into this was a couple of years ago, they drilled into a bonanza grade CRDs, now only with 1 or 2 holes, so they have to go back and do more follow-up drilling. But with all the success that i-80 Gold and Paycore are having, I think that Golden Lake has all the signs that they could have important discoveries of bonanza CRDs with high-grade gold, silver, lead, and zinc. And more evidence is not just the drilling that they've already hit a bonanza grade CRD, but also that their property had a significant amount of historical mining on it for CRDs. Then they went in there and did a bunch of sampling, which was recently reported, and they're finding that exact same kind of mineralization at the surface. So as they go deeper and they drill, I think the company is going to have a lot of success finding bonanza grade CRDs, similar to what Paycore and i-80 Gold have. And they have I think about a $5 million valuation right now. I think it's very oversold, trading right in the middle of their 50-day and 200-day moving average. I think all of this trend is going to start going up as they get closer to drilling, and every day they're getting closer to first doing some geophysics, then following that up with drilling, and can jump on the coattails of i-80 Gold, and I think that makes for a very compelling story. That's i-80 Gold. Speaking of i-80 Gold, i-80 Gold is to the north of this company I just talked about, Golden Lake. Now, i-80 Gold announced right here some phenomenal grades of in their bonanza grade CRD in Eureka. And as you can see, the stock had a very strong move. Then it went through some profit taking in January, and then February came around, gold got punished and they got punished as well. but then they bottomed in early March and have been on a very nice move since then. In fact, I just did put out an interview with Ewan Downey, their CEO, earlier this morning, and it's a very compelling argument as to why you should be considering i-80 Gold. I mean, my closing comments in that video are that I believe they have every asset needed to create a multi-billion-dollar company of the future. And I'm not talking 10 or 15 years into the future. I'm talking over the next couple of years. So I advise you to go to my YouTube channel at Rocks and Stocks News to check out that interview, or you can also find it on my Substack at rocksandstocks.substack.com. This is a perfect company for investors that want to be exposed to gold, but they don't want a lot of downside risk. And the quality of their assets, not just in the deposits that they have, but also in the mining infrastructure that they have, give very good protection for the downside. But the quality of their projects, I think, gives them tremendous upside potential. So for those that want a little less risk, but want to be exposed to the upside potential in gold, i-80 Gold is a good one for you to take a look at. All right, now I'm getting to the M's, which is McEwen Mining. McEwen is not a sponsor of my show, but I've very happily had several interviews with Rob McEwen, who runs the company. Rob McEwen is nothing short of a legend in the mining business. And he ran and built Gold Corp into the big success it was. And now I think he's going to do it again with his McEwen Mining. They have some gold mining operations that were having some troubles, that they are turning the corner on those troubles. They're bringing the cost of production down and improving the quality of their grade quality control. And the gold story is starting to move in a very positive direction. But what caused this big move from a low, these are Canadian lows, 370, let's say, to its current price of $12.40, is that they have a copper project called McEwen Copper. It's a division of, or 52% owned by McEwen Mining, owns 52% of McEwen Copper. The other portion of that company is basically owned by three groups. Rob McEwen himself owns around 14%. Newton, which is a division, or is a venture of Rio Tinto, one of the world's largest mining companies. And Newton has a proprietary technology to recover more of the copper from a copper deposit, such as what McEwen Copper has, and they can increase, or they can get the copper out of the rock much faster. So better grade and faster recovery means for quicker delivery to your bottom line. And the interesting part about Newton is that they did two big investments, 20-some million and 30-ish million. The first investment gave them the ability to start testing the McEwen Copper deposit with their proprietary method to increase copper recovery and do it faster. And then they made a second and bigger investment after they had been doing this assessment. So what that tells me is Newton believes that their proprietary technology is going to work on McEwen Copper's project. Now, it already had very handsome, low cost, lowest quartile costs of any undeveloped copper deposit in the world. and it was the 9th largest undeveloped copper project in the world. So it's got it already had low costs and big. Now they've got a technology that looks like it's going to be proven that it can recover more of the copper and do it faster. So that's, Rio Tinto's involvement through Newton into McEwen Copper. But then another big shareholder is Stellantis. Now, Stellantis is a car maker that the name may not ring a bell it may not be a household name, but the brands of automobiles that they make certainly are Jeep, Chrysler, Ram, Alfa Romeo, Maserati, Fiat, Jeep, are to name some of the cars that they make. And they have invested 150 million US dollars into McEwen Copper. So McEwen Copper is 52% owned by McEwen Mining. And then Rob McEwen himself, Newton, the Rio Tinto venture, and Stellantis each own about an equal amount. I think it's averages about 14% each. So, and then there's a couple percent that are owned by institutions. So the only way that investors can get involved really with McEwen Copper is through McEwen Mining. And as you can see, that as that developments have arisen, so has their stock risen quite dramatically from the lows back in August to the current price, up 50 cents today to $12.40. Very powerful chart, and rightfully so. They've got a great combination of exposure to gold and copper. Went through a golden cross in December. Is now trading well above the 50-day moving average, $3 above the 50-day moving average, and almost double the 200-day moving average. And as you can see, both the 200 and the 50-day are in bullish trends pointing upwards. You got the triple whammy there: 1, 2, 3, all pointing to the bullish directions, and most importantly, the fundamental story of their copper and their gold. And this is another one that I just did an interview with Rob McEwen. I think it was last week. Yes, it was last week. And you can find that on my YouTube channel at Rocks and Stocks News, or on my Substack at rocksandstocks.substack.com. Okay, now we have another M, which is Masivo Silver. Masivo Silver is a small explorer in Nevada. In fact, I just did an interview with them last week as well. And what really stands out to me with Masivo is that, and they're really an underloved story. You can see they were a very patchy trader. They made an announcement of success with their first hole at this project in Nevada that was a historical producer back around World War II. Extremely high grade. These guys went underneath one of the old mine workings to see if the mineralization continued, and also their interpretation that that some of the past drilling was angled in the wrong direction relative to the mineralization, and they drilled perpendicular to it and hit it, and hit some very handsome grades. But they topped out at around 42 cents. They got on bargain sale, but I'm really impressed with this story. And one of the things that really impresses me about Masivo Silver is that Brian Brewer is their head geologist, and Brian was instrumental in the success of Mine Finders. And Mine Finders was one of those big success stories of the past in the exploration scene. They were a penny stock that made an important discovery and ultimately were bought out at many multiples of their valuation pre-discovery. And he and the guy who was the CEO are both involved with Masivo Silver. So you've got a really talented group of people involved with this tiny little company. And the reason that they're involved is because of the quality of the project in Nevada. And also they've got some good projects down in Mexico where Brian Brewer and Mark Bailey had their big success with mine finders. The one that's on the immediate horizon is the drilling that they're doing at their project in Nevada. I think that you would be wise to go, and if you want to learn more about Masivo Silver, go to my YouTube channel. I recently did an interview with Brian Brewer and the company's CEO, and gives you a lot of great insights into how they're going about exploring and why they think that they're onto something very big. You just go to my YouTube channel at Rocks and Stocks News, or you go to my Substack at rocksandstocks.substack.com, and you'll find the piece on Masivo Silver. And I think it's a great place for you to start your due diligence on Masivo. Okay, on the base metal front, 9 Mile Metals is in the Bathurst mining camp of New Brunswick. I talked about it earlier when I was talking about my company, Advanced Lithium. And they've got a very excellent group of projects in the Bathurst mining camp. In fact, Advanced Lithium and 9 Mile Metals are kind of unique in that the two companies have gone into a historically important VMS mining camp, the third most important mining camp in the world. And these two small companies own most of the important project ground in that camp. Now, 9 Mile Metals has gone in there, and sorry, I'll bring up their chart. 9 is their symbol, and there's their chart. So they went into that old camp, and it's one of these old stories that you hear in the mining business. You go into an old important mining camp and you use modern technology, and you find new, or in this case, massive sulfide occurrences. And the big one was this one here that got the stock into overdrive when they announced the results from their 9 Mile Brook lens. This is a lens of massive sulfides that comes right to surface, 10 to 20 meters in thickness, and up to 10% copper in that, as well as zinc, lead, silver, and gold. And then they went over here, and they when this move happened, they went over to 20 kilometers away from that 9 Mile Brook lens. They found their California Lake VMS occurrences in multiple holes, and very good grades as well. And that's at the top of a system, and a VMS system, and very spectacular looking core. The big point about both of these discoveries is that they're brand new in a very well looked at camp. Now, most of the looking in that camp happened in the 60s, 50s, 60s, and 70s. So it's a revival of an old camp story. And when you start using modern exploration techniques and making new discoveries in what can be referred to as elephant country, that's an important event. And I think it's going to lead 9 Mile Metals into great success in the future. Right now, they're drilling in the follow-up drilling to the 9 Mile Brook lens that caused this excitement. And they had an important news release out that I'm quite impressed with. They had news out last week where they announced that they didn't have assay results out yet, but they said that they had sent 700 meters of core in for rush assaying. Now, why that's important is in massive sulfides, you can see that clear as day in the drill core. The fact that they sent in 700 meters of it is that suggests that they hit a lot of massive sulfides. The fact that they rushed it, I think, makes me believe that they know that they've got something good there. They're using a lab to that will quickly turn around the material, and they could have assays out as quickly as 2 or 3 weeks from now. And this company has a sub $20 million valuation. If they keep on going in the direction that they have been, and also find the source of the 2 massive sulfide occurrences that they found that come right to surface, kitty bar the door, this will trade at many multiples of its current valuation. So stay tuned for the assay results that they have coming out very soon. Okay, now I am up to the S's. SilverCrest is a silver mining company. That is one of my picks. They're not a sponsor of my shows, and I've never done an interview with them. I've tried, but they don't call me back, unfortunately. Nonetheless, I feel very strongly about this company. Back in November, they announced that they went into full commercial production, had a pretty nice run from the November lows until the late January high here of 996. Then we had a tough market in February. I talked about that earlier as the employment numbers came out. The US dollar got stronger, gold and silver got punished. The banking crisis came around, and bang, this company's right back to this high. And I think they're not too far away from going into new highs. The reason that I say that is their Las Chispas mine in Sonora, Mexico is quite exceptional, has a very low cost of production and a very high grade. That makes for a lot of free cash flow. Now, I believe that there's a lot of institutional investors that are going to own SilverCrest in the next year to 2 years. But it takes a couple quarters for those bean counters at the institutions to count the beans. And when they do count the beans, I'm quite confident that this company is going to have a very low cost of production and very high grade, and be a free cash flowing machine. And that's the kind of stock that gets their outperformance of their peers. So for the investor that wants exposure to gold and silver mining without a lot of downside risk and yet lots of upside potential, SilverCrest is a great one for you to take a look at. Okay, still in the S's. Don't know if I got my alphabet right, but here's Sokoman. Sokoman is looking for a orogenic gold system, and I think they've found a jewelry box hit that was announced back here. In these orogenic gold systems, one of the big milestones is when you start hitting bonanza grades of gold. And it's no coincidence that as they got to their deepest hole is when they hit their highest grades and over thick intersections. And now they're drilling there again. They call it their 463 zone. I think they've got an exceptional orogenic gold story here that's very oversold, that the market doesn't really understand, and a cheap valuation relative to finding one of those. I'm a junkie for high-grade gold, and the high grades that they hit in that 463 zone really grabbed my attention. And I'm pretty proud that I'm often able to, off of 1 or 2 holes, see something special transpiring before the crowd does. And I think that's the exact story I see with Sokoman Minerals. And also they've got this lithium project that I don't think is getting enough attention, I mean, the stock is not far from its 52-week lows, yet I don't think they've ever been in as good a position as they are right now. If they just went back to their 52-week highs, it would be a double. But I actually believe they've got the potential results to come out that could drive the stock much higher than a double. And I've done a lot of interviews. This company's a sponsor of my shows. Done a lot of interviews with Tim Froud. He's a great guy, real sharp geologist. Go to my YouTube channel, Rocks and Stocks News on YouTube, rocksandstocks.substack.com to find all of my work. And I talk about Sokoman a lot because I'm really bullish on their Moosehead Gold project, orogenic gold, and also their lithium project. Okay, so now let's see, where are we? Oh, a new sponsor, Summa Silver. I really like this story, and I just started covering it about a week ago, right around here. And it's coming to life. And what I really like about this story is that they got this project in New Mexico, really phenomenal grades, and they have a bunch of holes pending from that drilling. In fact, I recently, when they became a sponsor a week, 10 days ago, I wrote an article about what I liked about the company. And in that article, I included the table of results from their New Mexico project. It shows the reported grades and the pending holes. They had some great drill core. They had great cross sections and plan maps. And I included all of that in the written report, welcoming them to my Rocks and Stocks News sponsorship program. Go to my Substack for that one. You go look at rocksandstocks.substack.com. Now, another thing that they have, and I included that in the report, was a project in Tonopah, Nevada. Also spectacularly high grades. These are all epithermal vein systems. They're into the boiling zone of these epithermal veins in Nevada and in New Mexico. And I still think that they've got a tremendously undervalued stock here. It's had some higher lows here, and I don't think it's very far from having some higher highs. That would be about double the current price, and I definitely think that they've got the catalysts to move to that higher price. Some of the catalysts are a bunch of pending news from drill holes from their New Mexico project. Some of those are deep into the system, and I'm kind of thinking that they could have some of their best holes from the New Mexico project still pending. Then they're going to start drilling out their Tonopah project. And then after that, they'll start drilling back at their New Mexico project. So they've got news flow for the rest of this year. And they're such a new sponsor that I haven't even had a chance to interview their CEO yet, Galen McNamara, but we're working on it. He's a busy guy. He's out there telling his story on a constant basis. And I really appreciate that, because I think it's important for companies to keep being out there telling their story. People these days have low attention spans because there's so many distractions, and you need to keep telling your story, keep it on top of mind of people that are interested in these kind of companies. And that's one of the things that is one of the check marks that I look at to evaluate a company. You're not out there aggressively telling your story, nobody's going to hear about it. And so I'm working on an interview with Galen, and stay tuned for that one. Okay, now we've got Timberline. Timberline Resources is also in the Eureka mining camp in close proximity to i-80 Gold. i-80 Gold is the leader in that camp. They're a $700 million valuation company. They've been doing very good because of the Bonanza CRD that they found. They're taking over Paycore, which is to the immediate south of them. And right beside Paycore, Timberline has what they call their New York Canyon project. And New York Canyon, that project had seen a significant amount of historical mining of Bonanza CRDs that are similar to what Paycore and I-80 Gold have been drilling into. And the similar kind of geology is there, the similar kind of network of structures are there. They did some surface sampling to pinpoint where they should be drilling, and sure enough, they found the silver and gold mineralization that is reminiscent of what's over at Paycore and I-80's ground, and they're getting ready to drill that New York Canyon project. I'm very bullish on that. I believe that they're going to have success. There's sort of a circle of influence there. You've got I-80, Paycore, Golden Lake, and then Timberline, all within close proximity and all having that Bonanza CRD potential, not just potential, but have drilled into it, and historical mining in the region. Timberline has a great address in that immediate area around I-80, Paycore, Golden Lake, and their New York Canyon. But then to the south of Golden Lake exploration, they've got a resource of gold that is getting bigger. That as they extend to the east, all the mineralization, all the faulting, all of the rock packages are all pointing towards this big geophysical anomaly. What I believe is happening is that geophysical anomaly is what has caused all the gold mineralization that they have in their resource. That's the heat engine or the source potential. And if the geophysical anomaly suggests that you look at the distribution of gold in their resource, and it's almost exactly the same strike length, but even bigger geophysical anomaly. So I think that geophysical anomaly is in fact the source of the resource. And as you get into the source, you often see a much higher grade. So I'm really excited about that combination of their New York Canyon and also their resource area with this huge geophysical anomaly sitting right beside it. Okay, the final company, the W. I didn't leave the last, the worst for last, or however that saying goes. They just happen to be the W. So Walker River Resources is in Nevada. I think this stock is very oversold here, trading at the 52-week low. And why I say that is they've got what's called the Laboucan Canyon or Laboucan Mountain, and over an area of about 600 meters side to side and over 800 meters top to bottom, they have widespread gold mineralization in drilling and also in historical mining. I think they're into a 2 to 5 million ounce target. And the reason that I say that with confidence is that throughout where the mineralization is in drilling or past mining, there's a network of faulting. And that's the conduit that the gold mineralization fluids follow their crack in the earth or the path of least resistance to get towards where they've drilled it. And another important thing is as those fluids hit the country rock, they chemically alter, and they've got this big alteration zone where all of this faulting and the gold mineralization in the drilling and the historical mining. All of these things are pointing towards a big high grade target of 2 to 5 million ounces of gold. Now, one of the most interesting parts of that project to me are where the faults all coalesce at the bottom of the mountain. There's an area that has the most intense alteration right where all of those faults come together. And then there's this big canyon that is another important fault. And right where they all meet is where they have this big alteration zone. I can't wait to the day that they get down to the bottom and start drilling into that, because I think that they are looking at 2 to 5 million ounces inside the mountain. At the bottom of the mountain and below her could blow this story wide open. I'm very optimistic about it. These kind of targets are not easy to find anywhere in the world, let alone in the best mining camp in the world, which is Nevada. And that's exactly what Walker River Resources has. They are a sponsor. I've done a bunch of interviews with Michelle David, the company's CEO. Go to my YouTube channel at Rocks and Stocks News, or on my Substack at rocksandstocks.substack.com, and you'll find out more about Walker River Resources. Alrighty, folks, there you go. That's my show for today. Great things are happening in the gold market. I think we're in the very early days of a multi-year bull market for gold. And you know what's important to also point out that yes, gold is starting to move, silver is lagging, and the gold, silver, and other metals juniors and developers are lagging even more. And so I believe there's a wave of generalist investors going to come into this space. And when they do, they're going to find these very oversold, cheap valuation junior explorers or mine developers. And they're going to raise the tide is going to raise all boats. And I happen to believe that many of my sponsors and my picks are going to significantly outperform that. One of the reasons is they are all committed. All the top picks that I make are committed to coming and doing shows on Rocks and Stocks News. And I believe that's important because I want to educate my audience, but it's also instructive to people in the industry in that you need to be out there on a constant basis telling your story. There's a lot of competition out there for people's attention. And, you know, studies say that you need 10 to 20 impressions, logos, or reading a story about someone or watching a video about them before an investor or a consumer makes a decision to purchase something. And that's why I think that companies need to be regularly getting their story out there. And I think we've got a great audience, and I'm always happy when important companies and executives of mining companies make it a point to appear on the Rocks and Stocks News show. So as always, my shows are for information purposes only. Important for you to speak with your financial advisors and also do your homework. You know, great place. All of these sponsors and a lot of the picks that I make have done interviews. You can find those on Rocks and Stocks on YouTube or at rocksandstocks.substack.com. And that's a good place for you to start the homework. Then go to their websites, check out their news releases, check out their corporate presentations. An informed investor that does his homework always makes the logical investment decisions, which increases your potential to be a successful investor. And on that note, have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.